Hey, everybody. Today for you, podcast number 72. Today's podcast is titled, You Probably Won't Do This, But You Should. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Lombardi. This is Sandy Lombardi sitting right next to me. And this is the Limitless Life Network podcast, where we flesh out the limitations that are preventing you from reaching your goals and living the life that you were called to lead. And just want to start the podcast off with a little bit of gratitude, thanking you for tuning in each and every week. Super excited to hear about all of you that are listening now. Definitely got some new people out there listening. I'm excited about that. And like, follow, share, subscribe, all that stuff really helps the algorithm to get this out to more people. But, we're trying to help people just...
One at a time.
Yeah, one at a time. Yeah, so that's awesome. So on with the show. This is an interesting title. What'd you think of the title?
I think it's great.
Put you right on the spot. What'd you think of the title today?
I came home from this afternoon and he's like, I got a great title. You were really excited about it.
I guess I like it because it's a dare. Right? So we're daring you, really. You probably won't do this, but you should. So are you the type of person that if you're challenged, you'll step up to the plate? That's kind of the question, right? Like, you probably won't do it, but you should, right? So, all right. So I was inspired by a couple of different podcasts over yesterday and today that I listened to kind of create this podcast, sharing some of the same information, but it packaged a bit differently. And I added some things too. But I have a story that yesterday afternoon, I went back to the office and with Associate Doctor Tim. And Dr. Tim, before he got into chiropractic, he was a drummer. That was it still is one of his passions, is music, but he's a 3-time world champion drummer. Not many people know that about Dr. Tim, but those that know him personally know that that's his thing, drumming, guitars, and all that stuff. So I said, Dr. Tim, how is it that you were able to get to that level of success? And he didn't even flinch. He's like, I'm willing to just outwork anybody. He goes, I will work anybody else's bones into dust. And I was like, whoa, that is intense. And then he told me his story of growing up he was the poorest family in his hometown. And he was the youngest kid. And he just, I think, wanted to be, valued for what he could do. And he was an excellent baseball player as a little kid, and they wouldn't even let him pitch against other kids, even though he was really, really good. And so that really bothered him, and they wouldn't even pick him for teams and stuff. He was always the last picked. And so I know that always just really got in his craw, just got to him. And he said when he got into 9th grade, he found out that if you got into the marching band, everybody wore uniforms. So nobody judged you by how poor your clothes looked. It was either you could play the music or you couldn't play the music. And he's like, I have a level playing field and I am going to win, right? Like he just took that opportunity and he did everything that he possibly could. And he had a mentor along the way that really, really helped shape him in a lot of ways. So I think that's just a great segue into today's podcast because, point number one. What's point number one?
Point number one was people love to do what they love and hate to do what they don't.
Yeah. So isn't it true? that we continually do the things that we like to do and avoid the things that are not our jam. You know,
Whether it's we're comfortable with them, it's routine.
Yeah, but then the things that you know you should be doing, what do you do with them?
Avoid them.
Yeah, you avoid them, you put them off, you pretend they don't need to be done. You find ways around it, right? So whether it's comfort, habit, routine, tradition, whatever it might be, little thought or effort, complacency, fearful of trying something new and different. But I think, you know, of the biggest thing I see is that there's things that we just don't like doing, right? So we avoid those things. And you know, like I really don't like to type emails.
Okay.
It's kind of weird. I don't. It's just like getting the address, getting the sub. You know, it's like, well, I mean, it's a weird thing, but I don't really enjoy typing emails. But there's time and a place where you have to send emails to people today, right? In the old days, you just wrote a letter, right? And then I guess I would have probably not liked doing that either because that's even more effort. But emails are very simple, but sometimes I just don't like sending emails. It's just a little extra step. But but sometimes you just have to do them. Yeah. So point number 2. What's point number 2?
Fear holds most people back from doing the things they need to do.
Yeah. So what are people afraid of?
I think we're afraid of failure, afraid of disappointing someone. That's a big one. Fear of the unknown.
Yeah, fear is a very powerful emotion. You know, fear is a big motivator for a lot of people, and it's a motivator to either do something or to avoid things. I think one of the biggest fears that people have is how they're viewed.
Sure.
I think we are super self-conscious of what people are going to think about us if we do something.
Well, and social media has exaggerated that tremendously. We think everything we do is on display or being talked about broadly.
Yeah. And yeah. I think another thing is like our reputation. We think we're going to damage our reputation. Like if I fail, what's going to happen, you know? But nobody really remembers your failures. Nobody really pays attention to things that you tried and didn't really succeed at. But they will remember what you do succeed at.
Right. And I know for myself, I can be my worst critic, right? We're often the hardest on ourselves.
Yeah, we are. And that leads to usually little action is like when we're very critical and super self-conscious of what other people might think, and how are we ever going to recover if we do fail? Will I ever get back to that status? But people that really care about you are going to love you anyway. But so most of the times it's something that we make up in our head that doesn't even exist. Like and I think it's important to call it out.
Yeah. Because
if you can shine some light on this, then you'll realize that it's really just a story in your mind that you're telling yourself that's really not 100% accurate. So yeah. What's point 3?
Point number 3, who wants the best results?
Yeah, that's a great question. I ask it all the time. I ask it of people that are beginning care in my office. I ask it of, other people too. Like, do you want the best results? And what do they usually say?
Yeah, of course.
I actually never met anybody that says I want mediocre results.
Right.
I want poor results. I've had some people look at me like, what's the catch? Why are you asking me that? Because, we're afraid of being taken advantage of for sure. Right. So, how do you get the best results? Say you're going to bake a chocolate cake. How do you get the best results?
Follow the recipe exactly. And don't skimp on certain ingredients. And yeah.
Yeah. So it seems very simple, right? If somebody were to give you the recipe to lose weight, do you think you could do it? Could you follow the recipe to a T?
You could, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
It's a choice.
yeah, it becomes down to like, if it's written down for you, you have to actually have a deficit of calories, right? That's the key to losing weight. You have to have a deficit of calories. You have to work on sleeping correctly, right? So if you can fix your sleep so that you're getting good sleep, if you get a deficit of calories and you get some exercise every day, 40 minutes, zone 2, you're going to lose weight. It's going to happen.
Well, and I think like, it just came to my mind, like we think we're so different from each other. Like we're all unique, and yes, we are, but there's some basic things that we all have in common, and principles will work across the board, like the ones you just described.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but we overcomplicate it, and we don't understand how to. So I have to eat less calories than I burn. Well, then I'm going to actually have to know how many calories that is. Like, what's my, you have to you have to know, like, if you're going to have a calorie deficit, you have to know how many calories it just takes for you to be alive in a day. Right. And then you have to have less than that. Right. So, and then you'd have to know how to measure those calories. So calorie counting can change things, but you also want to have some exercise too. So that's an example of following a recipe, but you can't just like wing it.
Right.
You can't like say, oh, put in some flour, put in some sugar, but never measure anything. Right. So that's the specific side of following the actual recipe. If it says to put in 2 cups of flour and you're just like estimating by dumping flour in a bowl, you're not
guilty of that.
Yeah, but you're not following the recipe.
Right. And then I get this crummy result and I'm like, oh, should have
just taken the time to do it right. And that's oftentimes what happens is we get frustrated because our results are subpar. And so we're like, oh, that doesn't work for me. Right. I don't know I might work for you, but not for me.
But honestly, we know right away we skipped steps. Like, oh, I made a substitution I shouldn't have. Like, we know.
But isn't that like an ego protecting thing that we say, like, it didn't work for me. I tried it. I tried diet and exercise, so I had to go on this medication to lose weight because, my doctor said it's good for me. Okay. All right. That's your story.
Yeah.
How hard did you try? What's the recipe that you followed? Yeah.
Well, so, whose recipe are you following?
Yeah. And is the recipe going to produce the result? Is it a tried and true recipe? Yeah. All right. So, what's the next one? What are
4.
We're up to 4 already. Wow. We're ripping through these. Okay.
Do all the optional things.
What in the world? Do all the optional things. All right. So this is really the part that I think is the name of the podcast. And the optional things. What in the world are the optional things? What do you think?
Well, you could say extra, but I don't know if they're extra because they're essential.
Yeah. The optional things are the things that involve you making the choice to do the extra things. They are extra. They are the things that produce the unique results. They're the things that nobody, for instance, if you're tired of the results that you have right now and whatever you're trying to achieve, you have to do something extra. You have to do something different because what you're doing now is perfectly designed to produce the result that you're living in. So if you look at somebody, whatever it might be, it could be in a career, it could be in fitness, it could be in a spiritual walk, it could be in any avenue of life. If they have something that you don't have, well, guess what? They're probably doing something that you're not doing, right?
Well, in the example of Dr. Tim, he was doing a lot of the optional, right?
Oh, yeah.
Extra training, coaching,
right?
Discipline.
Yeah, he's like, I don't need sleep. He's like, I don't need sleep. I'll work around the clock if that's what it takes, right? He's like, I will work your bones to dust. I mean, that's a different mentality, right? Well, I'm not that aggressive. I don't want to go that hard, right? Well, guess what? If you want to go as soft as you're going, that's the result you're going to have, is the result that you currently have. And that's called staying in that comfortable zone, right? Yeah. So the optional things are all the little things, and they all add up to big things. I remember one guy that I mentored with for years. He had the most exceptional results in his endeavors. And I asked him, like, what are some of the top things? And he's like, it's not a couple of top things. Yeah. He said it's about 500 things, and they may seem very insignificant and small, but you have to do all of them, and you have to master every single one of them. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like a lot of work.
I remember him saying that.
And he's like, it is a lot of work. Whoa, there's that thing that, now all of a sudden there's an aversion. There's like, you're in your back of your mind, you're thinking, I don't know if I can do this, because that sounds like a lot of work. And that's the self-talk that you start having, this dialogue back and forth in your head. And all that does is it prevents you from getting the work done. You're just delaying any type of success that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Yeah. So last one is point number 5, and it's get an accountability partner or group. So here's one thing I'm going to challenge you to do. And that one thing you should do, and I hate to say it, but probably most of you won't do it. Probably most of you won't find somebody to hold you accountable. And I hope you do. I hope you prove me wrong. I hope 100% of you prove me wrong. But find somebody or some group that you can trust that can hold you accountable. I'm going to speak from experience. I've had an accountability group for over 10 years. And these 3 other gentlemen, we've had a couple of people come in and out of this group, but these other 3, the 4 of us, have been holding each other accountable for over a decade. We meet every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m., no matter what, wherever we are, on vacation or not, in an airport, in a car, whatever it takes. We meet each other at 6 a.m. and we're online or on the phone for 1 hour. And that's the way I think that's one major thing that I've been consistent with, and we've all been consistent with, and it's helped us all to grow to a place that we would never be on our own.
Mm-hmm. What tips would you have for our listeners? Like, okay, we pick someone, then what's the next step? We have to get some specifics, right? We have to be honest of what we want to achieve.
So the first thing is be prepared for the long haul. Like, see this as something that you're going to do for the rest of your life, if you're serious about it. Mm-hmm. And pick a time that you can keep sacred and do it every week. And what I mean by sacred is that nothing gets in the way of it. And if you've got to pick a time that it's a little inconvenient, but it's always going to happen. And the inconvenient thing is it's always early in the morning, and it's always on a Tuesday. It's always at 6 o'clock. I mean, if you wanted to kill me, it'd be the easiest way to find where I am at 6 a.m. I'm always in the same place pretty much, right? So if you know where that place is, you could intercept me. But the point is that it's consistency and what you talk about, and it doesn't even have to be for an hour. If it's just a one-on-one thing, but you've got to share. It's got to be open. You have to have trust, and nothing leaves the accountability group. So that's how you keep trust. Like, what is said in the group always stays in the group. Mm-hmm. And that's otherwise, if there's gossip, if anything is brought out of the group, I don't share anything with my wife unless I have permission. So it's straight up, it's in the group, it's always in the group. And that accountability allows you to be vulnerable. And, I know that if I'm not getting something done that I said I'm going to do, I know that on Tuesday at 6 o'clock, I'm going to hear about it. Mm-hmm. So it just makes me get things done that I have to do. Yeah. And we all will do better with somebody holding us accountable. So yeah, that's all I got to add there.
Excellent.
All right, cool. All right, well, thank you all for tuning in. That's all we have for this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. Tune in each and every week to stay connected, be inspired. Hopefully we inspired you today, and keep moving toward your best life by stripping away your limitations. So we will see you all next week.